welcome to the North American Bear Center. It is 11 o'clock here and time for our first enrichment program of the day. I would just like to mention that this is a worldwide broadcast, and on average we broadcast to over 30 states and about 8 countries during these podcasts. And so I'd just like to give a shout out to our worldwide listeners and also our worldwide volunteers who help make these broadcasts possible. One of them being our PTZ driver, who is operating a live camera we have out that shows this pond area. So thank you very much. And you can get to that live camera as well as 3 of our other live cameras by going to our website at www.bear.org. I would also like to give a shout out to our moderators and just take a moment to recognize one that we actually lost yesterday. So a moment of silence for him for 1 second, and just kind of recognizing all the time that this particular moderator put in. I believe he put in a lot of good effort. He was a good guy, and so I'd just like to have a moment for him. Alright, it is a beautiful day here in Ely, Minnesota, and right now we have a staff member who is out in our enclosure. Her name is Heidi, and we call her Mom Number 1, and we call her that because she right now is trying to get down our yearling Holly Bear, who is over to the far left. She was taking a little snooze. Oh, there she is. PTZ driver. Holly Bear is coming to the left of the pond. There she is. She was taking a little snooze in the white pine, which we have been finding she does very frequently around this time. Now, Holly Bear is our newest addition here at the Bear Center. She is only about 19 months old, so she's not full grown. We actually weighed her yesterday. She's about 96 pounds. And so she's at a good weight right now. It's a very healthy weight. And she came all the way from Arkansas. So we received her. Sorry, there's a bug flying over my head. Okay, so we received her in December 27th of 2013. And she was wild born, so she was born in the wild in Arkansas and separated from her mother by a forest fire. And they tried to rehab her to make her releasable into the wild. However, she was deemed unreleasable, and she really did not have very many options once an animal is deemed unreleasable to the wild. They need to find a forever home, or their other outcomes are pretty grim. And so the North American Bear Center gladly received her in December. And as you may imagine, Arkansas in December and northern Minnesota in December are quite different places. Regardless of being in Arkansas or Minnesota, typically by December, black bears should be hibernating. And that was our #1 goal. Even though when we received her, she did have some infections and a skin condition, our vet advised us to get her into hibernation, which we were successful in. And then when she came out this spring, we worked not only to make her healthy and get rid of those infections and treat the skin conditions, but we worked very, very hard, especially our staff member in the enclosure, to get Holly Bear used to her new environment, get her used to new bears, and get her used to people. She was very frightened, a very timid little bear when she came out of hibernation. In the spring, she was very unsure of herself. She had low confidence. And so through the efforts of staff members like Heidi, she has grown and become very trusting of Heidi especially. And they have a special bond, which has been very cool to watch and develop over the last few months. Now, how do you get a little black bear who is terrified of people and very very unsure of herself. How do you get her to become trusting of people? Well, one way we did that was feeding her a bottle. And we did this for multiple reasons. One reason being she needed food, obviously. And black bears, for the first 17 months of their lives, stay with their mothers and nurse those 17 months. And so we made a formula meant to mimic a natural, what a mother would be feeding her babies. So that was one reason. It was also to help with her skin condition. We put in some vitamins, some oils, a whole bunch of nutritious things. We had goat milk, yogurt, egg yolks, all sorts of stuff in that formula, so that her hair would regrow nice and pretty. And as you guys can see on her back, kind of her spine area, it's a little patchy, but compared to April when she came out of hibernation, she looked a lot better. There was pretty much no black fur on that area that you could see. It was covered by these mats and little dreadlock kind of things, so she's looking a lot better nowadays. And the third reason we fed her a bottle was, like I mentioned before, it created a bonding opportunity. And we fed her the bottle twice a day, and Heidi really stepped up and became kind of a surrogate mother for little Holly Bear. And for those of you on the deck, you may have noticed that Heidi was calling Holly, our yearling, and Holly came scooting down the tree and ran over right to where Heidi was. Now, black bears have excellent senses of hearing, and she can discern our voices. So she knows that I'm talking over the microphone right now, and she knows that Heidi, her surrogate mother, was calling her before. And she can associate those voices with food, typically, is what we try to do. And so we weren't really sure if Holly knew her name like a month or two ago. We were like, she might know her name, we're not really sure, but now we're very positive that Holly Bear here does know her name. So they're very smart animals, they have very good long-term memory. Now what do we have out in front? What are those toys we have for her right now? We have a tube, which is pretty much a PVC pipe with 2 holes in it. And inside are some peanuts, unsalted of course, and some dried cranberries, which are some of our bears' favorite foods. And the purpose of giving her a tube is so you folks can see and understand what black bears eat and how they can use their paws, their noses, their tongues to manipulate those objects to get the food out inside. We've also provided her with a little ball thingy, and we put in some strawberry extract, and so it smells really strong in that little ball. There's no food beyond that, and we're hoping she'll play around with it a little bit. You guys can see just the dexterity they have in their paws, which is quite amazing. Some other foods we feed our bears here at the Bear Center. I can talk a little bit about their diet. Black bears are omnivores, so they are not carnivores. They're not really meat eaters. They're not predators. They don't hunt animals, and they're not strictly herbivores. So what does an omnivore, what does that mean? Well, in the wild, the majority of their diet is vegetation, and one of their favorites here is white clover that we have planted out in front of the pond and kind of behind it. All of our bears love to eat that and chow down occasionally, or many times I would say, throughout the day. They also eat grasses and leaves and flower parts. Another one of their favorites in the wild are berries, and fruits are very important when they're trying to pack on the pounds before hibernation. And they eat pretty much all types of berries. We have some wild foods planted out and about in our enclosure. We have choke cherries, we have some strawberries. A staff member and I Heidi, the girl who was out calling for Holly, she actually picked some wild strawberries for our bears and fed them. And we tried to give Holly some wild strawberries, but she wasn't really having it. She was like, I don't really want that. I think I'll pass. And each of our bears do have different food preferences. Oh, looks like Holly's trying to figure out what's going on with that ball. And as you can see, they're very good with their paws. I think she figured out pretty quickly there's not actually food inside though. Anyway, bears, well, vegetation's number one. They love berries, and they also rely heavily on nuts, especially in places like Minnesota, where the growing season is very short and the fruit and food availability is very limited. So hazelnuts are very important for black bears in Minnesota. And those are the main components. That's 90% of what a black bear eats. And only about 10% of a black bear's diet is protein. And a majority of that protein comes from bugs. So usually ant and bee pupae are where black bears get the majority of their protein. They are opportunistic animals, and so let's say they're foraging for some berries, and like I mentioned before, they have a very strong sense of smell, and they are one of the few animals that actually can detect and kind of smell a little bit spawns that haven't stood up yet. I actually just read that, and so black bears can actually smell that scent, which most other animals cannot smell. And if they smell it, let's say they're foraging for berries and then get a whiff of it, they will eat that fawn. They won't go out of their way. They won't hunt or stalk any animals or prey. Another example of when they would eat raw meat, let's say there's a wolf killed, so let's say a wolf left some remains. There's documentation of bears eating some of that raw meat, but other than that, they really don't eat raw meat at all. Most of their protein comes from nuts and bugs. And so here at the Bear Center, when we feed our bears in the morning, they usually get a head of romaine lettuce, along with some carrots and usually an apple. And we feed them a raw egg in the shell to get their protein. And it's funny, a lot of people have myths about bears that they're these big ferocious animals, big claws, and they are very strong animals, but they're also very delicate animals. And when we feed them their egg, they'll take it in their mouth without cracking the shell. And each of our bears eats it differently. So one of them, Lucky, which I'll talk about him in a little bit, he's our 7-year-old male, and he'll take the egg and put it on the ground between his two paws, and take one paw and just crack it ever so slightly to get the yolk and white outside. And so they're very strong animals, but they can also be very delicate and deliberate animals as well. So that's where we give them their protein. And then we have 3 enrichment opportunities like the one right now, where we usually give them a toy of some sort with usually some nuts, usually peanuts in or out of the shell, or Brazil nuts are another favorite of our bears, with some sort of fruit, whether that be fresh or dried. I think Heidi is throwing out some red grapes, which I got the nod, yes, which are some of our bears' favorites. They love the red grapes and prefer them actually over the green grapes. And they like seedless too better, so they're kind of picky, which is funny. And so we have those programs 3 times a day. And then for dinner we have usually another romaine lettuce, some carrots, and bear chow, which is pretty much a trail mix of peanuts, dried cranberries, and sunflower seeds. And so we feed them 5 times a day. And some other foods we feed them include pears. Holly here loves avocado, watermelons. I love watermelon, especially on hot days. Like today, it seems like it's going to be a pretty sunny, warm one. So they get a whole variety of different foods. The most of it are fruits, vegetables, nuts, and that egg. And so we'll talk a little bit about the other bears we have here at the Bear Center. We have 4 ambassador bears, 2 male and 2 female. So one of the females is Holly, right out in front. And I would just like to mention again that when we received Holly, she was terrified of people and just so unsure of herself. And now, as you can see, she's laying down, she's munching away on those grapes, and Heidi is able to actually pet and check her fur and see if there's any bugs or ticks or anything on her. And this, even 3 weeks ago, probably would not have been possible. So, and also, Holly doesn't allow just anyone to do this. And so it just demonstrates the deep bonding these two have together, which is really sweet to watch. Anywho, we have 3 other bears. We have Lucky Bear, who I mentioned before. And Lucky is our 7-year-old male. And he and Holly, our yearling, have a very positive, playful relationship. And they play pretty much every day together. They'll run around trees, they'll run up trees, they'll chase each other. They've played in the pond before together. And so we also think that Holly and Lucky playing together has built up Holly's confidence. And so we're really happy to see that relationship blossom throughout the weeks. And Lucky Bear, like Holly, was born in the wild. He was born in Wisconsin and was orphaned as a cub. He was actually taken out of his den by a person, so someone physically removed him from a den, which is never a good idea. Eventually, the Wisconsin DNR was found Lucky and removed him, and he was deemed non-releasable back into the wild as well. And so we received Lucky when he was about 7 months old, so he was younger than the age of Holly right now. And that was in 2007. Now, 2007 is the year the Bear Center opened, and so it was very lucky timing for this little bear, and that's where Lucky gets his name, Lucky. And he is just a goofball. He is so playful. He's about 330 pounds, and he climbs up trees, he runs around, he'll grab his bottom paws and roll down a hill. He's extremely playful and extremely curious, so he's a hoot and a half. He's a joy to watch when he's out and about. Our next oldest bear is Ted Bear, and Ted Bear is 17. Now, Ted Bear is our largest bear. He is 550 pounds. He's a big guy, and he's just a bigger bear. And he is a sweetie. He's, I would say, our most calm and relaxed bear. Oh, looks like Holly's climbing, getting that food in the platform on the pet tree. And Holly is an excellent climber. And a few staff members and I have noticed that her claws are especially long. And black bears have long, curved claws which are extremely strong to aid in their ability to climb up trees very fast. Now, climbing trees is very important for black bears, especially bears the age of Holly. Holly's a yearling, and I mentioned briefly that for the first 17 or so months of a black bear's life, they are with their mother, and then usually after that, moms will just kick out their babies and say, "See ya, you're on your own." And so a bear Holly's age in the wild would be on her own right now, and would have to fend for herself. Now, Holly, being a female, black bears live in a matriarchal society, so her mother would actually give part of her territory to Holly. So mother bears give part of their territory to their female offspring, but they do not to their male offspring. So life for a male yearling black bear in the wild is quite difficult. Black bears are territorial, and so, especially for males in the wild, they spend a lot of their time up trees, and that's for a few reasons. Most of the time, other bears will chase up yearlings up a tree because yearlings don't have a territory, they don't know where the food is, they're still getting their bearings. And so other bears who are more situated will chase little yearlings that are smaller than them out of their territory and usually a tree. Another reason bears spend a lot of their time up in trees is because it is their biggest defense mechanism in the wild. I don't think there are any other predators or other large animals that climb trees as well as bears. And So that's how they've survived for millions of years. The more timid bears have passed on their genes, and that is how they survive. And that is why black bears are so very timid. And why they're excellent climbers. So if you see a bear in the wild, usually, if you just clap your hands or yell, or we suggest shake a plastic bag, it'll run right up a tree. Because, like I mentioned, it is their biggest defense mechanism. Climb first, ask questions later. And Holly Bear is an excellent climber. Anyway, I was talking about Ted Bear. He is 17, 550 pounds. Ted does not climb trees anymore. He's getting a little older. And he is actually not out right now. And what I mean by out and in, we have 2.5 acres in this large enclosure. So what you guys are looking at is our 2.5 acre enclosure. We then have 4 separate pens for each of our 4 bears. And they are about the size of a 2-car garage. And so Ted right now is under our vet supervision, and he's just taking a little break right now. He's having some paw issues, and so our vet advised us to just let him take a little rest for a little bit. So he's just chilling in his pen for now. And like I said, or I was saying before, Ted is just the sweetest bear. He's so calm. I think it's arguable that he likes people more than other bears. That's just sweet. And he and Honey, our 4th bear we have here at the Bear Center, have a similar background. Ted and Honey is our 18-year-old female. She is our oldest bear here. And she is also our cinnamon phase black bear. So we'll be letting her and Lucky out in about 10-15 minutes. So hopefully she'll come on down and you guys can see her beautiful coat. It's like a reddish, like a cinnamon color. And only about 5% of bears in Minnesota have this cinnamon phase color. She will have that for her whole life. And many people say, oh, she must be part grizzly or part brown bear. But no, she's in fact 100% North American black bear. But she just happens to be cinnamon in color. But her and Ted, they were both born on a game farm in Wisconsin. So they were both born in captivity. They were then purchased by a private party and lived there for the first 10 years of their life, 10 or so years of their life. They could no longer keep these bears, and so they obviously could not be released into the wild. They needed to find a permanent home, and so we received them in 2007 as well. And so Lucky, Ted, and Honey all came to us in 2007, the year we opened, and Holly Bear here came in 2013, right at the end of it. And those are our 4 bears we have here at the North American Bear Center. And for those of you on the deck and our BTZ driver, it looks like Holly is standing on our rock den. And that is a pretty good example of what a bear den looks like. I have actually seen dens a lot smaller than that. And so our bears, this den has not been used since 2008, I believe. And all of our bears here do hibernate. We also have a window den, which is down below. And if you go down to our viewing windows and to the far left, you can actually look inside. But also the main window den. And so these are 2 examples of denning areas we have here at the Bear Center. Otherwise, those 4 separate enclosures I mentioned before each have a separate little denning area as well. Now, hibernation is pretty interesting in black bears, and it somewhat depends on where they are regionally. So, like Lucky, who is from Wisconsin, it's a colder climate in Wisconsin than, let's say, a bear from Arkansas, where Holly is from. And North American black bears are found throughout North America, so there are populations in Mexico, throughout the U.S., and up into Canada. There's none in Hawaii, though, unfortunately, so no black bears in Hawaii. However, in North America, they're very populous. And so So a bear, let's say Lucky, born in Wisconsin, he would hibernate a lot longer than a bear found in Florida. And that is because there's a lot greater food stress in places like Minnesota. Our winters are very cold, and by October, there's not a lot to eat. And so bears, like Lucky, he went into hibernation in October and slept all the way through winter and came out in the spring. Now, Honey, our 18-year-old cinnamon phase female, we suspect that she has southern genes because she only hibernates probably 3 or 4 months a year, so significantly less than Lucky. And she went into hibernation, I believe it was December 1st, actually, so pretty late. And so we suspect her genes are more southern. And it will be interesting to see when little Holly Bear hibernates. And you may be thinking, well, she's from Arkansas, she'll hibernate probably less amount of time, it's warmer there. But she may actually have some Minnesota genes. And that is because in the 70s, early 70s, Minnesota actually traded black bears for turkeys, for wild turkeys with Arkansas. So Arkansas had a very low black bear population, they were very concerned. And Minnesota has had a very good black bear population. We have about 20 to 25,000 black bears, so very good population size. And so we gave them some Minnesota black bears, and in return we got some Arkansas wild turkeys. So we have turkeys in Minnesota that have southern genes, and Arkansas have black bears with Minnesota genes. And so she may actually have Minnesota genes and may hibernate very early and hibernate very long. So it will be very interesting to see. Over hibernation is also when mother bears have their cubs. So January, which may seem like an odd time to have cubs, is typically the coolest month of the year. But no matter where you are, black bears are born in January, and mothers are awake. That's a question we get a lot, is if black bears wake up during hibernation. And they do move around a little bit, but especially mothers, they are awake for the birth of their cubs. And the cubs are born under a pound, and they are tiny, they are very loud. We have some vocalizations on our website and in our exhibit hall. Actually, when you come down the stairs from the observation deck on the wall, there's some really good vocalizations of cubs. They squall, they moan, they actually hum when they're content. So when they're nursing, they'll get this really kind of interesting humming noise. So they're extremely loud. And they have to be loud because they need to communicate with their mother, especially in January when they're in the den, especially in Minnesota when it's probably pretty cold. They need to say, hey mom, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm uncomfortable. And so they're very vocal animals. Alright, well, thank you guys for joining us for our 11 o'clock program. And thank you to our worldwide volunteers and listeners, wherever you may be. Thank you very much. These broadcasts would not be possible without you guys, so thank you. I would like to mention to our folks here that we are open until 7, and the pass you purchased is a full day pass, so come and go as you want. We have 2 more enrichment programs, one at 1 o'clock and another one at 4. We will most likely be letting out Lucky and Honey in about 10 to 20 minutes, so if you stick around, we'll try and get those guys out in front. Otherwise, thank you all for visiting, and I hope you enjoyed this beautiful day in Ely and at the North American Bear Center. Thank you very much.